Are we rolling?
Of course we're rolling.
Ooh, okay.
Welcome back to the Mystic Rebels podcast. It's been a minute.
It's been a long minute, yeah.
They don't know because I'm putting all these out in succession, but for us it's been a little bit between
That's very
from
true.
the last one to this one.
If you binge watch this, you'll have no clue. So they'll be like, whatever.
Tonight's topic.
God and the afterlife. Ooh. And wherever we want to go within that realm.
And today's sponsor.
Yes, today's podcast is brought to you by Mystic Rebels. Now with the Rebel Academy open for business. Logan Cross will be doing his first class, The Basics in Astrology, on January 15th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Learn the basics and understanding of your own chart so that you can decipher not only your stars, but your friends and families for years to come. And then Ashley, moi, will be doing her psychic development course where you will be understanding and honing your intuitive mind. There will be a psychic activation of the third eye. You will be meeting your spirit guides, understanding how to purify and protect yourself while you do this work. And this class is the foundation for my upcoming tarot class, this first class will be on January 22nd at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And both classes are highly affordable, a wonderful value, and at mysticrebels.com. Ah!
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Couldn't have done it better myself.
Thanks.
Not in this Mercury retrograde. I stammer. See, I can't.
It's cute.
Let's talk about God.
Let's talk about God.
Where do you even want to start with this topic? Because it is...
I want to start with just simply asking you, because we don't prep before these. We don't have any notes or nothing's hidden. So it's all authentic, which is really what I think we're trying to cultivate, is just authentic conversation. So Logan, what is your belief when it comes to God?
As it stands now.
I mean,
not
sure.
like my path just today.
Well, I mean, you can start with your path. We can start with our relationship to God and how we were introduced to the concept.
Okay. Yeah, as a history, I'm going to truncate it so that we can talk about other things.
Okay.
But essentially, I had my childhood, which
we all did. Yeah.
Thank you. It was unorthodox. It was not normal. It was not a pleasant childhood up until about 6.5 to 7 years old.
Was that when you were first introduced to God, or was there?
I was introduced to God when I was 8.
Really?
Yeah.
So the concept of God or a higher power or anything
didn't exist prior to that at all.
Really?
In any shape or form, from my birth family to any friends and family that might have existed there, to my foster home, to school. It was just not. I didn't know anything about it. And actually, I think that's why I used to get sent to the office all the time because I wouldn't say the Pledge of Allegiance because I hated the word God. I didn't know what God was, and I wasn't going to pledge my allegiance. And so they would send me almost daily. My mother knew the assistant principal. What's that?
Conditioning.
Yeah. Well, my mother and the assistant principal knew each other on a first name nickname basis.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Anthony was his name, but my mom knew him as Tony.
Nice. Wow.
So, and it was kind of the same thing over and over. Sometimes it was that, sometimes it was, other rebellious things based on my childhood that obviously processed later. It's for another episode. But I was...
We'll have to do an episode on trauma.
Yeah, right. We will. Chiron and trauma and healing.
Right. Yeah.
So I was thrown into a Catholic household when I was adopted, and they weren't super religious. My grandmother was pretty religious on my dad's side, and my father was more religious than I knew he was. I found out actually after he passed, he was much more devout than what my recollection of, the memories of him.
But he never spoke about God to you.
We definitely were Catholic. We went to church. I was in Sunday school. I was baptized. I did communion. I did all the community church things, and we had a specific church that we went to, which was not the closest one. We drove pretty far to get to it. And there were aspects of church that I did enjoy, even as an 8, 9, 10-year-old. But it was honestly when we got to Sunday school that I think I was like, I can't do this. And there were a few things that all kind of culminated around the same time. One, the main thing in Sunday school was they would play this video. You know how back in the day you used to have roll out the TV on wheels?
Cartoons?
No, it was a reenactment video of the parting of the Red Sea was actually it.
Oh, it was a reenactment. Okay.
It was like a reenactment with really bad visual effects and whatnot. But
cardboard cutouts.
I knew I was a smart kid. Yeah. And I did a lot of reading and studying and research, and I was always in like advanced placement courses and stuff. And I knew that if you actually parted a sea, that you would have to like go down and you would have to go across, and it would be this huge. We don't know how deep most of these are, and I don't personally know how deep the Red Sea is. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a shallow sea. I don't know. But in the depiction, the water was like, a couple feet deep, and he just did this, and the water separated, and they walked across, and I was just like, no, there's no, there's no way. And then like the whole water to wine thing, I was like, why?
It's all a metaphor.
I know it's a metaphor, but why would you physically do it?
No, but what they don't teach that it's a metaphor.
Right.
Yeah.
People think that it's real. Oh, it really was. And it's like...
They read the Bible as history.
And also, and you talk a lot about this, and I'll let you get to this in your own, but...
Okay.
The whole thing with Mary and Joseph and all that, just like it's... As somebody who had a rough childhood, who had no association to family... There's something about that still struck me weird. And it's ironic because in The Prince, the story that I'm writing, right, that I won't give too much away, but it is about the devil and God and family and relationships and stuff like that. So I'm all about this. I talk about this in there because I have a personal, I'm like, why? I don't get it. How can adultery be bad, but technically God is the adulterer in that situation? The Immaculate Conception, right? Yeah. She was married to Joseph. Yeah. The child is not Joseph's. That's adultery. I don't care if it's like spiritually based or whatever.
I mean, the spiritual argument is that while the seed may have been provided by Joseph, Jesus was born off-world in more of a cosmic way, and then the vessel.
Then he cannot be. Then he can't be human. He can't die for our sins because he's not us.
Well, I mean, who's to say that God isn't human, or
According to what I was taught.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. Is my philosophical mind kicked in, and I was just like, none of this is adding up. The story of Christmas. Finding out that Jesus wasn't even supposedly born in December. Yeah. And then finding out, the pagan roots and everything. But anyway, so... that
was fun for you this last Christmas because I was like, hey, baby, guess what?
Right.
Like, I had no idea. That's so cool. We'll get into that. But
and then, the biggest thing at that point was, and I didn't realize it at the time that it was all fear-driven. Hell, sinning... confession. Yeah. I never did understand the whole he died for your sins thing. Like, why can't I sin then? It's already taken care of. Like, the slate's clean. I should be able to do whatever I want. There was that whole thing. But what's more important is that I had like a very fragile sense of family. And I had one...
And identity.
Well, identity, but family specifically. And I had one... family member of my adopted family that I just he lit up my world. It was my adoptive father's brother. His name was Eric. And other members of the family have always been good to me. But
I've heard about Eric. He was a light.
He did. He was a light. Funny thing is, he was gay, and I had no idea. Yeah. It all made sense later when I found out, and I was friends with his partner and everything. I didn't care as a kid. Yeah. I still don't care, but right. I found out that, and then, but he was just.
But that also illustrates that your family wasn't like super religious.
No.
Which is great.
Nobody cared.
Yeah, that's great.
But he used to walk into the room and be like, hey, guy. He had this raspy smoker's voice, and he was just always made me feel like I had always been part of the family. He did not, when he was around, I never felt adopted. And that is not something I can say and nobody did it intentionally. It's like, nobody was like, you're the, it was just for whatever reason, his energy. And like 3 years later, he died. He passed away. And I remember being so angry. Like, it's not like I was handed like the fresh deck of cards, right? At the beginning of life. My life is already really difficult. And then for this to happen, and at the same time hearing, thou shalt not test God. God is a merciful God. And all these, they're not just like...
Say it.
They're not just like gospel passages. They're cult sayings. They are so it's the same thing. Like if you actually listen to a sermon, it's thanks be to God, thanks be to blah, blah, blah. You're like, it's so cultish, like, and you don't realize
I think they become more, what's the word? It's like automation, You're
a drone.
Yeah.
And that's why people get onto our TikToks and whatnot, and they say these same things. Yeah. It's like hundreds of people with the same comment.
There's only one path and Jesus is the way. We're just like,
you guys we can
give you a path out of here. Thank you.
They're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
That's programming.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, he passed away, and I just felt that how could God be a good God if he's going to take away the one person that really made me feel finally like a part of something? And then there were a bunch of other things that happened. So I went completely atheist. I said, there's no God.
That's pretty normal.
And if there is a God, he hates us. That's how I felt for a long time, for decades. No, not decades, about a decade, a little over a decade. I felt that way. I just felt if there is one, he's an a-hole. And I had a terrible relationship with that. I was very anti any type of religion, spiritualism, anything. Yeah. If you brought up anything that mentioned the word Jesus made me angry for the longest time. And it still lingers now these days. I hate that name. And it's because it was so driven in the Catholic Church. And then all these bad things happened in my life. Like we're talking about like really, really traumatic, bad things that I don't usually open up about.
Of course.
And it's like, yeah, that's great. Yeah. You can go ahead and pray to him. And
a victim of the system, a victim of birth.
There's a lot of things. But I've seen people pray for things like good people, unanswered prayers. And I was like, if I already have a problem with systems, and if this system here, this God system here with the angels and whatnot, that's effed up. And I just kind of went. And it wasn't until after my first child was born, and I was in my home. I had no home. I was living in my car when I started becoming a bit more agnostic. I was no longer like there can't be a God. I was more like
I just don't connect to one.
Well, I was more like there has to be something.
Yeah.
But it cannot be that guy on the throne. I know that that's not the answer. But I'm oddly here living in my car for over 2 years in Hollywood, in this odd situation of how I got here and the things that have brought me to this position. And after I've been living in my car, you do a lot of self-reflecting because what else are you going to do, right? If you're not drinking and you're not working and doing whatever, and my work was all Hollywood, like background audience, filmmaking, whatever. And but I had a lot of time in my car to myself, and it's different than like being at home and sitting in your bed. You're in this tin can, You're
very aware of your circumstances.
Very aware of what's going on and not sure of what's going to happen next. And some days I didn't have food. I'll save that for another podcast. But I just started thinking like something's kept me alive for this. And it's not just me. Like I'm very resilient, but what made me this way? Like how could I survive some of the circumstances up to this point if not for either guardian angels or a system that's higher than me, a power that's higher than me, something. And then I built my company, and then I met you after a bad relationship and
And then you really believed in God, right?
And then I was like, there she is.
Then you
my angel.
believed in the goddess. No, I'm just kidding.
You actually opened me up to tarot and the occult, and we got into these like philosophical, and I've gotten into conversations, but it was different with you because it allowed me to kind of like clear some of the
and astrology
stuff.
Like that's when you got into it to debunk it.
So Ryan, my best friend, had sent me, really good friend, sent me screenshots of Facebook conversations he and I had from like 2014, 2012, text messages. And he's like, I didn't realize you were into astrology back then, because apparently I said some stuff that was like very astrological for what I knew it to be.
Yeah.
And, my stage name when I was a hip hop artist was Gemini.
I mean, it's in your soul. It's in your DNA. And you've just learned how to communicate what you were born knowing. Like, I feel like this is knowledge that is just coming back to you, It's crazy.
It's been a through line. And actually, one thing I didn't say, which I think is kind of important, is when I was adopted, my adopted mother asked me if I wanted to change my name. And I used to draw stars on the paper, like hundreds and hundreds of stars on my schoolwork. And I said, I want star to be my name. I've always been connected to stars. Astro, it's been the through line, that thread. Yeah. And of course she was like, no, she didn't want me to get beat up, but I did anyway. And for other reasons, because I was the shy kid and I was the easy target for bullies.
You were the kind kid.
And I got into martial arts for other reasons, which line up to my astrology.
And you're probably goofy like me, which
I was a nerd.
They just love to mess with us.
But I was also the nerd because of my childhood. I was also the nerd that got into things 3 to 4 years later than everyone else. So by the time it was the fad was over and the cool factor, even for the nerds, was over. Like even the nerds were like, what's wrong with you? Why are you still into Sonic the Hedgehog? Like you're too old for that. Or why are you still into Ninja Turtles? Or why are you still into Legos? Like you're 12.
It's more like the nerd that was 20 years behind, listening to musical theater and reading old books and freaking kids out.
And the irony is we use that for our career and we live the lives that we love to live.
Right.
And we're late bloomers because of the Saturn placement. But anyway, I ended up getting back into astrology to debunk it because all the horoscopes were conflicting. And I was like, this is crazy. And then once I got into that and realizing that tarot was really giving guidance that was starting to get really specific. And then astrology, once I got into that and realizing that it was describing everything that had happened in my life. And then when you sit down, you just think about that, not like the math and the science of it, but the actual the actual planets that are out there and how huge. Like if you've ever seen the comparison pictures of like, here's the Earth and here's the little moon and here's Mercury. And then all of a sudden they're like, here's Jupiter and here's Saturn, here's the sun. And it just keeps getting bigger. And you're just like, who made that?
So what is your connection or belief in God now?
I don't like the word God.
Oh, okay.
I still don't like it. I just, from everything, it all connects back to my uncle. And I see that word connected to the idea of an a-hole just sitting up. And I wrote him that way in that thing. Not that he's an a-hole, but that he's not a good God. He is flawed.
The biblical version.
He's not the all forgiving whatever. No, he is a guy he's a king. I equate him to a king of an empire. And while he might be a good king, he is not infallible and he is not merciful.
Merciful?
Yeah. He's not, and he makes mistakes and he does things. And you and I were actually talking recently about the flood and Noah.
Oh yeah.
And the story and the two of everything and whatnot, and whether or not there was a wife in some versions and like how they could have possibly reprocreated. But the idea that you would kill 99% of all human beings, which eliminates the whole Adam and Eve thing.
Or kill anyone, really.
Yeah, for the sake of a clean slate.
In Gnosticism, which I've studied, it's very interesting that the actual belief comes from deconstruction of the Old Testament. And of course, it just becomes diluted and more diluted each year. But the idea that I was like, oh shit, is that God is in fact the devil. And the devil is simply an angel that became a patsy. And every lie that we've been told through the Bible has simply been to condition us to serve.
Control.
And a good, real quick point. And a good point of that is in the Garden of Eden. In spiritual traditions, all the way through, there is the tree of knowledge. And the tree where the apple is, the red of the apple represents knowledge and fruitfulness and vitality. And the fact that Eve ate of the apple because she was seeking knowledge. She was seeking something beyond the fabrication of the world around her. She bit into that apple, and the snake, the kundalini, this true spiritual essence of humanity, was there to tell her, eat baby, none of this is real. It's all a lie. And I was like, oh shit.
It's control.
It's all about control.
Well, back then you have to remember that churches were government, right? So control, that's what the whole thing
was being established by the Bible. I mean, if you're talking about when the Bible was written and used as law.
No, I'm talking about the transformation of the Bible. Like every time it was translated and things were taken out. And it's funny how people will deny that.
What's interesting is if you go to certain places like Greece, specifically Greece, there are ancient churches that were built on goddess temples where women went to honor like the goddess Diana in Greece. And it's actually etched into the church, the story of Diana and honoring her in their truth. And people are like, oh no, that's an old church. That's God's
Magdalene
house.
Thing.
And like,
Mary Magdalene.
That
whole thing. We'll talk about that in another podcast.
Okay. Because
you have a whole wealth of knowledge on that.
We should definitely have a podcast just on the Bible and the written word when it comes to religion and belief.
And the fact that it's mirrored through so many different cultures and other religions.
Yes.
And everyone.
No, we're supposed to be doing this in another podcast. We just said.
I'm going to segue out, but
okay.
I was just going to say how everyone was magically born in the right place with the right God.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's geography.
But how about you?
Oh, okay. My relationship to God, it's been a very interesting road because very, very early on, I was also abused. Hey, bing. And I think that in a very roundabout way, I signed up for that. You know, when I chose my parents, this is what I believe.
I was going to say, you have to explain how I get it, but not everyone else is going to.
Well, I believe, and I'm sure Logan will tell me if you're still on the same page, but I believe that we choose our parents and we choose a certain frequency of the parents so that we can learn the lessons that we need to learn in order to do the work that we need to do. And I firmly believe that the people who become healers are the people who suffer the most wounds, because otherwise they wouldn't understand people's pain. Yep. So, you concur, Doctor?
I do.
Doctor of the Stars.
Concur. I had another thought and I lost it, so keep going.
Okay. But I was I loved fellowship. I loved community, and I loved free cookies and tea. And although my family wasn't really religious, my mother and father were seeking something outside of themselves for many, many years before they found their own individual healing path. My dad eventually started trying to get sober when I was about 4. And it wasn't my dad that abused me, just so you guys know, or my mother. But it was this part of me that wanted to belong as well that kind of drew me to God in church. And I was, I have quite a few strong Pisces placements or Piscean placements. So I am a bit of a chameleon. I can flow with whatever people are wanting of me or talking about. And I was adorable, apparently. So, and a natural performer. So I could act as one of them very easily. And while I never believed the Bible, I always thought, oh, this is such a nice story. It's just like all my other books. I firmly believed and honored my Native American heritage, which I learned very early on. When I first started having nightmares after I was abused, my father would burn sage. We would always pray, which I loved. I loved the practice of prayer. But I had my first altar when I was 12. And it was, the catalyst for that was when I was about 8 years old. I had just been baptized, which is simply a cleansing, a spiritual cleansing, which I will be teaching in my psychic development class, different types of purification. But it's a ritualistic purification that is not specific to Christianity. They just adopted it, like most things. And shortly after that, I was sitting in church and I felt really uneasy and like I hadn't felt there before. I looked around and I saw this man's face and I told my mother about it, and I started having these horrific dreams and I was reliving my abuse. Then I told my mother about my dreams, and she told me, she didn't tell me exactly what happened, but she knew who it was and why I was having those dreams. And then she looked around and realized that his family had just joined our church. So we went to the pastor and asked if what can be done. And he, because we were there first, politely asked them to leave. I don't know if he was polite, but he was very kind to us. And I always have to give reverence to that. But the damage had been done, and I just didn't feel like that was a sanctuary for me. And I think that's really what church is for a lot of people. It's a sanctuary. It's a place where you can communicate with other people and like-minded individuals. It's a safe haven. But for me, it was a time that my family didn't fight, usually, because we were around other people. So everything was perfect. Everything seemed nice, and we were faking it till we made it, you know. And then I started reading early on. I went to Catholic school because I got into a little bit of trouble in my other school. And so my grandfather lent money to my parents so that they could put me in a private school. Thank you, Grandpa. And I ended up... Bible study in Catholic school is very different. And I was just like, question, if this is true, then what about this? I was a little bit of a...
Your math isn't mathing.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a problem. So mommy got a lot of calls, but my mother was a bear. She was just like, listen, my daughter has her opinions, and if she's asking for perspective, as the teacher, isn't that your job? Which I respected. I was like, yeah, Mom.
They don't like when you question the logical nature.
And
just
that's what's so ridiculous. Because I was just thinking, wasn't Eve the original thinker? She wasn't the original sinner. So we are
that's
supposed...
not what they teach, though.
Exactly.
They also don't teach you about Lilith.
Exactly.
Which goes...
The woman who wanted an orgasm.
Right, exactly.
How dare you connect to your pleasure?
Dare I consider myself equal to man?
Which is one of the things that is so unfortunate in service of women, because our orgasms, our pleasure, is the power center.
We talk about that a lot when we do tarot and astrology readings.
Yes.
And it's interesting when I get on the topic, because I've learned now just to kind of say it and just go and, because I'm always concerned, like, do I sound creepy as a guy telling a girl or a woman or female, whatever, talking about sex or BDSM or kinkiness or taboo things, or just connecting to yourself or connecting to your partner or whatever. But I stopped looking at that as me being a man telling a woman, and I just look as a teacher. It's all
in the delivery.
Yeah.
Which you're not creepy.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I know I'm not, but I just don't want to be perceived.
So how do you feel about the old
way.
slap and tickle,
But I've degendered it in my mind.
Yeah.
And that really helps. So
yeah.
But then I have to regender it, because I'm like, well, we're talking about Venus and we're talking about, whatever.
And Mars.
Well, Venus and Mars, and women having to connect more with their Mars, men having to connect more with their Venus.
Yeah.
And things like that. But again, another topic, another day.
I know, right? But getting back to my
finish. I want to know what happened after
Well, after I got into Catholic school.
Like why did you leave Catholic school?
I didn't leave Catholic school. Well, I left Catholic school to go to high school.
Yeah.
But, I see what you're saying. I built my first altar when I was about 12 years old. And I did my first spell when I was around that age too. And, I had pictures of different goddesses. And I was reading a book called The Divine Feminine. And these two twins from my class came up. And we were in the play yard. And they asked me about it. And there was nothing demonic about it. There was nothing evil about it. But they called my mother, or the principal called my mother and said that I was teaching them about devil worship. And I did have another book called Teen Witch, which was a Wiccan book. But I was just like, it's just information. It's just literature. Like, you can literally read it or not. And they're not even reading it. I'm just telling them what's in the book because they asked me. Thankfully, again, my mother went to the mattresses. But once I left Catholic school, which I gained so much knowledge there. It was a wonderful education. And I became like an ambassador for the school because they embraced me. They embraced that I was different and saw that I was intelligent and had value. And then I went to high school, and it was a totally different world. The first day of school, they were like, here's your test to see what you want to do with the rest of your life. I was like, you can't take a test to figure that out. And it was on a computer, and I was just like, meh. But
computer.
Well, it wasn't that. It's just so impersonal. It was like,
it is. And
sorry.
Keep going.
But then shortly after that, I found because my favorite spiritual shop was in Sonoma. It was called The Pyramid, and it was downtown on the square, which I would have loved for you to have seen. It was just the coolest little shop. But that closed, and so I ended up going to high school in Santa Rosa, which is about 40 minutes away. There were a bunch of shops in Santa Rosa. So Mama started shopping. And it took me weeks to pick my first tarot deck. And of course, it was the Goddess Tarot, because you know me and the Divine Feminine. And I just started exploring more Native American beliefs. And I've always believed that God is what my people say, which is there are different spirits and different energies, my people, straight up, in the rocks, in the trees, in the moon, in the stars, in the sun, So I've always prayed to Mother Earth, Father Sky, Grandmother Moon, it's just what I believe. And I believe that animals are medicine and birds are messengers from, the astral realm, and all spirits live in the astral realm, and everything is frequency. But at the same time, I also believe that if a Christian were to come to me and talk about God, I would believe that we're talking about the same God, because I believe they're all one. If everything is energy and frequency.
But isn't that what history shows us anyway?
That they're all one?
That they're all the same?
Yeah.
It's that it's anecdotal interpretations of what we've experienced and how we translate that into how we can explain to someone else what this is. And we use stories. The stories are supposed to... I always saw the Bible as Aesop's fables. Okay. And it always bugged me that other people didn't. And not that you have to believe what I have to believe, because I definitely don't believe that.
Well, I remember to be perfectly honest, I tried to read the Bible many times.
Me too.
But it was hard for me, and possibly because it's not really a book that's meant to be a part of my life, except to learn certain parts of it. But in the Bible, when Moses approaches the burning bush and says, "What is your name?" the bush doesn't say, "I am God," or "I am the voice of God." The bush says, "I am that I am. And when you speak my name, you will speak, I am that I am." So the Bible is literally telling us that we are God. Once we use the words, I am, everything after that becomes our reality and our identity. So when we speak in vain of ourselves or speak negatively of ourselves, we are speaking against God. But Christians wouldn't have you believe that.
No, and that's my biggest problem. Like, I have my reservations with the God. Right?
The God. Yeah, you know me. I love you so hard.
God, I have more issues with the word Jesus than I do with the word God.
And I think that's
life.
also, I mean,
It's
that's conditioning. And I have to be honest, like when I hear somebody's a Christian, I don't necessarily get defensive, but as soon as they say things to us like we've met so many people living in Florida, and I love it. Now I'm living authentically myself, and I know you're doing that too. So when we meet people, I'm not like, well, I do this and I do that. And I was like, I'm a spiritual teacher. And a healer.
It's a hit or miss. How
I read tarot.
Across.
My husband reads astrology, and then we have businesses, and they're just like charlatan, snake oil, you know.
In California, for the most part, because we were in that.
But we weren't these people yet.
No, but when we were talking about it, there were so many people around us who were kind of the same vein.
Yeah.
And honestly, liberalism and spirituality and alcoholism and being just lost in general are all Neptune.
Yeah, and Neptune can be a beautiful energy when you learn to focus it and not to, I mean, I talk about submitting to the universe. I talk about like surrendering to a cosmic, what's the word? Like a cosmic flow. Like try not to focus too much on the future, focus too much on the past, just be in the flow of things. But at the same time, there are people taking certain plant medicines that are very spiritual and very revered and precious. And they're doing it because they want to skip the steps of truly discovering themselves and their sovereignty within their spirituality.
Yeah.
And then
they're trying to hit that trip without experiencing.
And then they start leaning on the plant medicines more on a regular basis, which
you're saying this very delicately.
Yes, I am.
Basically,
because I think that everything is intention.
Abuse.
So when you take, but with the excuse of spiritual connection,
which is escapism.
Yes, it absolutely
you're
can be.
Running away from the real world.
Those medicines can be once you're ready and have done the work. Like I think one day you and I might do something like that. But it won't be. I mean,
we dabble in minor things like cacao.
Yeah, right? We've done heart openers, but I'm not really interested in escaping myself in order to learn the truth, because I feel like the truth is speaking to us at all times. And when we're still, and when we start trusting ourselves and living in our authenticity, we feel that God's self rising through. Because, you know, another reference to the Bible is they talk about the 7 sacraments. 7 is like when you talk about like cosmic geometry or numerology, 7 is everywhere. So you have the 7 sacraments, which speak to or reference the 7 chakras or the 7 heavens. And when
7 deadly sins.
7 deadly sins. Or when they speak of the kingdom of heaven, it's literally like hell is going all the way from the root chakra all the way up to the crown. He wears the crown up in the kingdom of heaven. That is literally getting your connection to spirit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's all related.
It's all related.
Absolutely. I talk all the time about how people need to find balance. Like that's the whole point. And how people escape into spirituality, whether it's religious or like what we do or like something, you know, completely different. People like to escape reality often. Yeah. A lot of people who talk about 5D, the reason that they talk about that is because they don't want to be a part of this 3D world anymore. Well, and it's all about, you have your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual. And if you are not in balance, you can't just cling on to one and ignore the other ones.
Well, instead of 5D or subscribing to like the ascension to another dimension, I do believe in other dimensions, but I also believe in God being a collective consciousness as well. So everything.
Well, that's what they're talking about, is a collective consciousness is elevating to 5D.
Yes, but what I think it is more people are opening up to spirituality and moving away from the structures and the restraint of religion, which creates a shift in the collective consciousness. Because I do believe that when you think negatively about another person, it can affect you.
Well, if we go back to just religion for a second, and you talk about religion as a Capricorn trait, which has to do with structure, which has to do with authority, which has to do with something that's long-term, traditional, and rigid. and look at
Which
that.
I'm so sorry. We have to touch on the fact that that's the devil card in that
ironic?
Yeah.
The devil card is Capricorn.
Yeah.
Which is church.
But
Institutions,
the
government.
Hierophant is, what does that represent?
I actually severed the link between astrology
so did
and
I.
tarot,
So I don't even remember.
Actually have forgotten most of those. But I linger on the devil card because I find the irony humorous.
I love the devil card.
Oh, it's a great card.
Yeah.
Just the connection. But I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry, you're talking about Capricorn and structure and religion.
Right before that. That's the problem with my Gemini mind.
I'm sorry, baby.
You stop me. I'm like, my GPS is off.
I'm sorry, baby. But we haven't touched. Okay.
3D, 5D.
Yes.
I was talking,
Collective consciousness.
The church separates you and God.
Yes.
Spirituality says you are God. A piece. You're not all of God, but you're a piece of God. You're collectively.
That you are your own church. The kingdom of heaven is within.
So church keeps us in the 3D because it keeps you down here in the real world to live
in
this
the
life.
Limiting belief that they feed you.
There's an afterlife that they say you either go to heaven.
You have to work for.
Or hell.
Yeah.
And it's not even if you're a good person. That's the illusion. It's
not only that, you have to tithe. You have to give them your money in order to go to heaven.
I mean, some churches more than others, but there are some churches that demand you give 10% of your paycheck.
Or more.
Or pressure you into a certain percentage.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is just that keeps you down here. And it literally separates you from God because you don't have any godly power. You're praying to angels. You're praying to God. You're asking for forgiveness.
Yeah. But you're also afraid. Like you're praying as a result of your fear.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a genuine connection to God. It's a fear of being somebody sinful.
And what does fear do to our immune systems? What does it do to our mentality?
It's the fight or flight response. Your body doesn't know the difference.
Always in a constant state of stress.
Yeah.
And
we're teaching our children this, so.
Worship. That was another thing.
Start them young.
You worship God. You worship Jesus. You worship the church. How do you, as a 6-year-old, you don't even know what love is.
Right.
And worship is an extreme
Well, I think you know what love is for your family.
I'm talking about I'm not talking about
outside of your
Yeah. I'm not talking about what's the word?
Family unit. Loved ones.
No, when you love
Unconditional?
Unconditional.
Unconditional.
What was it eluding me? I'm not talking about unconditional love. I'm talking about active. I see it. I get to know it. I fall in love with it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know Jesus. You don't know God. Those are abstract terms.
Yeah.
It's not like I ate an apple. It was yummy. I held it in my hand. It was delicious. I love apples.
An apple a day.
Yeah. Well, that actually
imagine if we told children at 6 to worship themselves. To love themselves.
Could you imagine
that they are
preaching
divine?
Self-love from a young age?
I mean, this is what we're teaching our almost 2-year-old. Yeah. It's like she can do whatever she puts her mind to and works for and teaches herself and believes in herself. Absolutely.
Ours and your bonus child.
Yeah, a bonus daughter.
And they both are filled with immense power and potential. And see, that's the thing too is... when I'm doing like astrology readings, I'm looking at people who have these God-given gifts. And I did a video recently talking about Gemini, Pisces, Scorpio, Libra, Taurus, Leo. That's half of the zodiac signs right there that have to do with creativity on some form or another, or this connection to something greater than you. Like, where did those talents come from? They're not just innately in you.
Yeah.
You feel that way, but you're channeling this from
I think that's God energy coming through.
It is God energy.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and they say as an artist, when I was on stage, I used to say I was in the zone or I was flowing, because you're not necessarily outside of yourself, but it's like when you let this meat suit not necessarily drive and you let your what? But I mean, that's what we are. We're blood, we're bone, the body. We're so much more than the physical body. Correct. And they don't teach you that in Christianity or most religions.
They'll teach you that anywhere.
I mean,
basic school.
In India and certain like ancient traditions, Native Americans, but you're talking about the main religions in the world, like is Christianity. So yeah.
Most of them don't teach that. I know a little bit about a lot.
Yeah, well, Hinduism.
One thing that's missing.
I mean, there's different.
They talk about connection to God, but they don't say you are God.
No.
They separate you intentionally because, again, governments.
Yeah. And even Gnosticism.
Churches are government.
Even Gnosticism says that only you are God, and that there is nothing beyond you. That you create everything, and I understand the abstract response to the extreme of Christianity, and Gnosticism was around long before Christianity ever was. So it's a very interesting perspective on things, but it's a bit bleak.
I don't like any isms, so it's like I pick and choose the parts of different things that I like.
Yeah, and that's the way it should be. It should be a buffet of whatever connects you to spirit. I call God spirit. Okay, so now I think we're touching on the afterlife. Yeah,
so many different. I mean, the bottom line is I don't know, but.
I think I do know.
I question. You think you do know?
I think
I have a conflicting, but go ahead.
That's okay. No, you go first.
No, go ahead. I'll jump into mine.
Okay. Well, first of all, seeing someone die, which we watched my mother slowly decay, and then we were there the last few hours of her death, and we were the only ones in the house. I realized that we are not of the body, that, while her body got weaker, her spirit became more pure and sweeter and kinder and gentler. And it was almost childlike and innocent and so psychic. She
was a Pisces moon.
She was, but I think also she was out of her own way at that point because she was piercing the veil. I don't think death is the end. And I certainly don't think that there is a heaven or hell. I think that we create that heaven or hell. Because going back to ayahuasca or these, powerful, potent plant medicines, let's add another P in there. A lot of people, especially ayahuasca, who experience that journey, which is what they call it, go through something very, very similar, where once it's taken, they are basically shot through a portal into complete darkness. So many people's concept of hell, immobilized, complete darkness, no voice, no one to see, no stars, nothing shining through. And then they eventually come to a point where they let go of their suffering and their fear, and they realize, I'm just floating in the abyss. Nothing's happening to me right now. Everything is fine. Was that Elvis's tummy? And then they get shot through another portal of rainbow prisms, and then they meet gods and goddesses or aliens or what have you. And, it's basically the plants, they call it Mother Gaia, she is a messenger of the Earth Mother. It basically shows you what you need to know. Everybody gets the same information, but in different containers. So some people, it'll be through a relative. Some people, it'll be through a goddess. It's all different things. A friend of mine the aliens talked to her.
Do you think that it's possible that trip or that journey or whatever you want to call it is just a result of the lack of the human mind's capability to interpret what actually happened?
No, I think it's beyond the body and beyond the mind.
Yeah, but how do these people come back and try to explain what happened? How can a rational mind actually understand that?
I think that's the problem. I don't think you're supposed to explain it. I think you're supposed to integrate the lessons that you take from it.
I find it interesting because those same people tend to go again and go again, and
that's
they become
the thing.
addicted to
that's
this.
the thing, because they think they experienced a high, and they did per se, but it's Native Americans. They take plant medicines, peyote, tobacco mixed with wormwood, and those kind of things to bring themselves to higher consciousness as a purpose to gain knowledge for people who are sick, for people who need guidance, or themselves on their own spiritual journey, like a medicine man or a medicine woman. But it's very sacred work, and it's only done when it's called to you. The medicine basically speaks to you and says, let's do an initiation, or let's talk, because Native Americans believe that the dream world is in fact the real world, where you can actually do so much more, and they learn to augment that world in a way that we don't know, and actually work within it and gain access and gain truth.
It's an interesting concept. That plus like Akashic records and things of that nature.
I think they're all one.
I think my experience has been that pretty much everyone I've ever met who has taken it has like turned out to be really crazy.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about there has to be a balance. Like if I were to ever take it, I wouldn't want to take it more than once. And I don't even know if I really ever want to take it, because you can gain those high transcendental states through meditation. It's not easy. I mean, you haven't done it yet, but I've done breath work and meditative work. I
think it's different for everyone. Everyone's energy works differently. Meditation doesn't work for me like that.
That's okay.
I have things that get me to a meditative state, but actual meditation doesn't work for me.
We're going to be married for the rest of our lives. Can I make a bet with you? You are going to meditate, and you are going to enjoy meditating.
No, I'm not.
And it's going to take a few years.
Meditation brings anxiety for me.
I know, but that's because you're still healing that part of you, just like I'm still healing my insecurities about other things.
This is where we disagree.
That's okay.
This is the public witnessing our disagreements.
It's not a disagreement. I've seen it.
I've tried so many different ways of meditating. I've tried breath work with you. I've tried acupuncture. I hated that.
Oh, well, that's not meditation.
It was supposed to be meditative.
It was supposed to be relaxing.
Yeah, and it was not.
It was weird.
I hated it.
Okay.
I've tried guided meditations. They just agitate me.
Yeah.
You've seen all these reactions I've had.
I know.
But
who you are now is not who you are going to be in 20 years.
We'll see. I still have a Mercury in Gemini. That will never change. I still have an opposition to Uranus. I still have a trine to Mars, and then there's a sextile there. That energy will always be. When I go for a drive by myself and separate, and that puts me, when I'm alone in my car, I zone. I know that sounds really dangerous, but I go on autopilot, and I am in a meditative state when I'm in my car.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can pull off to a side of the road or a parking lot and stay in that zone.
But you have very vivid dreams, don't you?
No.
Oh, that's right. You don't dream.
I mean, dream, you do. But they're always related to family. Family represents, and I know why, but family represents experience. And I'll often have the same dreams over and over and over. And I can't tell if they're messages because nothing in them actually relates to much.
A lot of my recurring dreams have, I now believe, are past lives, or at least snippets of past lives. There's an interesting book called The Children That Remember Their Past Lives, and it's based on a doctor from the United States who went to India and interviewed hundreds of little kids who, before the age of 6, and not only remembers their past lives, they can remember like down to the minutia of details.
But how do you know?
Lives.
There's no way to prove this. And that's my issue with the whole past lives things is.
Are you that person on the comment feed? How do you prove it? Pseudoscience.
Hey, look, you and I, when it comes to spirituality, are very, very different. You are of the Pisces mindset.
No, that's fair.
I'm of the Gemini mindset.
I'm gonna explain it to you. I'm gonna explain it to you that the big, you wanna go clinical on this? The big difference between children in India and children in the United States is that intrinsically, we are taught that the afterlife is heaven and hell. We are taught that when this life is the only life. Okay, that's what I was taught.
No, I believe all that.
Yep, hold on.
Okay.
In India, there is a much more spiritual aspect to their religions. There is a much more connection to spirit. And when children say things like, oh, I was once this, or I once did this, their parents aren't telling them, what are you talking about? This is your only life. This is the only thing that's ever happened to you. I'm your mother. You don't have any other mothers. You've never had another life. No, they're like, well, that's very interesting. And they nurture a child's connection to that previous life or whatever they're remembering, whatever you want to call it. But
right, no, I agree with everything.
It forms their character.
I agree with everything you're saying on a spiritual level. But on a logical, real world level, if you start telling me about events that happen in a past life, there is absolutely nothing that anyone in this world could do to prove that what you're saying is right. It's belief.
Yeah, I'm not trying to prove it.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm not trying to prove it.
So as it becomes belief, you cannot prove it. I can prove astrology. You can prove tarot. But when someone starts talking about Akashic records, their past life, the afterlife, any of that stuff,
I could walk you through meeting your spirit guides. Okay,
But that's a belief system. I have to believe that's
no, let me finish. If you have that experience, say the first name that comes to your mind.
My mother's name, Barbara.
Okay, Barbara. Say you meet your spirit guide and you ask their name and they say Barbara. Okay. Your spirit guide's name is Barbara.
Okay.
Okay. And she is this beautiful grandmotherly essence. She, and you can go visit her and get guidance from her whenever you want. Now, there is the belief that is simply your subconscious taking form based on your imagination.
Okay.
Okay. There is also the belief that you can actually have these kind of relationships and connections.
Okay.
It doesn't matter which is true. If you're gaining the knowledge, and
we're in agreement here.
Yeah. No. I'm speaking to this is a podcast.
To people.
Yeah, speaking to the
people.
But I'd rather look at you. It doesn't matter if it's real or not. I truly believe that these children, because children don't have a reason to lie. Obviously.
But children have a heavy imagination as well.
Yes. But you know what Einstein says? Einstein said, if you want your children to be smart, read them fairy tales. If you want your children to be smarter, read them more fairy tales. Because imagination is the only limitation in human form.
I don't disagree with any of this. I'm simply saying that when you start talking about the afterlife, you start talking about past lives, it's very difficult to prove. Like impossible.
But see,
difficult.
That's the problem. We took the spirit out of medicine and healing and a modern society. Like church and spirituality has been segregated from logic. And science and all of that is supposed to work with spirituality. So there can be logic, there can be the critical mind, which has merit, but there needs to be a balance between the two.
Right. And that's my point.
Yeah.
And also my point is that not everybody believes and thinks the same way.
Absolutely. So the problem is nobody should try.
Right.
But when you say something like,
start talking about,
prove it.
I know. But my point is when you start talking about past lives, you're talking about a belief. You're not talking about anything that you can prove. And as somebody, I'm trying to tell you how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And as somebody who has a logical mind, I can't rectify, I can't justify.
Can you prove that the crystals that you use on your desk?
Yes, vibrations. I can prove vibrations. They've proven vibrations and I can physically touch them and feel them. I can feel this, right? Pyrite, when I hold it, I don't connect to it because I'm thinking, as soon as I hold it.
So when you
put
connect
flower essences on me while I was in a really depressed state, I started laughing uncontrollably.
Yeah.
That was proof right there that it was happening.
Okay.
Past lives, you cannot do that. So
how
I'm
can
not
you not
discounting.
do that? You're still connecting to a vibration.
I'm not discounting.
You're still connecting to a vibration.
There's no proof.
There's proof within the person experiencing that vibration.
You can't prove it to me that your past life was what it was. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but I don't.
I can
need
put
to prove
this in your hand, and you can also feel it.
Some people can't. because they don't want to feel it.
I'm not talking about wanting.
Or they don't believe that it has any power. Once you believe it, then you can feel it.
When we started talking about stones, I've always loved stones.
I know.
But I had no belief that they had vibrations or healing properties. I did not believe that.
I think you did. And you didn't realize it.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I thought they were pretty.
Okay.
And we
that's
collected
enough.
them.
That's enough to get vibration from a crystal.
Right, but it's a different connection that I have now. I actually feel the energetic resonance. But I didn't get into it because of that. I picked one or two. It was just like, yeah, cool, I'll have them around. They're pretty to look at. And I was never into it like that. I was completely against it. I have a logical mind.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm saying this is not to tell someone they can't believe that. It's to say that there are a lot of people like me out there who there's no way they could get on board with this. And I can't get on board with it. I actually don't know that I believe. Okay, here's a good for instance. In astrology, the South Node supposedly is
the energy you came in. Oh, that's the energy that you
from
came
a previous
into
life that you came in and becomes your default pattern. But the more I read about the nodes, how they're calculated, how they're formulated, what they actually stand for.
So then what do you think happens to us when we die?
Hold on. Let me finish that statement. The less I believe that they have anything to do with a previous life and more to do with high and low frequencies of the moon, because that's what they are. So they're the moon's nodes. So your emotional state, it's the lowest, most default comfort zone of your emotional state. Whereas the North Node, what we call where your soul's purpose is just the opposite resonating frequency. It's out of your comfort zone within the same spectrum of energy. So that's how I view that now. I no longer view it as what textbook says.
I like, with the North Node being what you're supposed to learn in this life and your lessons for this life, you don't believe that anymore?
I don't believe that is it. The more charts I do, the more I realize.
But with your North Node is in Cancer, right?
Cancer in the 12th house.
Yeah.
I believe that those things are that through our lifetime, we are put into positions, because the moon also represents people. And it literally represents your mother, your family, and the public. Literally always someone else. And it brings situations through people that force you into that higher resonating frequency of it, because it's not
you always think it's other people?
It's always other people.
Okay.
Your moon is your relationship to your emotions. It's not your emotions. Well, I guess because I have a
separate relationship with the moon, like the spiritual relationship with the moon.
You have a relationship with the moon.
Yes.
I'm talking about your moon. When I say your moon in astrology, I'm talking about the cosmic imprint that creates your emotional state. That has nothing to do with the moon.
Okay.
They're completely different topics.
Okay.
They're just moon energy. One is you, the other is the one that keeps
So let's get to what you believe. What do you...
For the afterlife? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what I believe at this point.
Okay.
I believe that there are other lives. I don't believe in heaven and hell.
Okay.
I don't believe that we reincarnate into other animals either.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense.
I would agree with that. I don't think that you, like, if you're a dick, you're gonna come back as a
tadpole,
socket wrench or something, you know,
or an inanimate object.
I think that it has a lot to do with frequency and the work that you do in this life. You know, my mother, when she was dying, really resisted. She was scared and she didn't want to die. And I think that the energy that you approach death with has a lot to do with the experience you have after, and not necessarily that she experienced turmoil after, because I've studied NDEs, near-death experiences. And what I love about reading those stories, nothing dark or anything like that, these are all very uplifting, is once they are on the other side, they experience nothing but love and acceptance. And it's very hard to come back from that. And I suppose I've researched them to understand when people either take their lives or are living a life that they aren't happy about. And it's very hard to come back from that. And that's why so many people will stay there. But again, it's a frequency of like the highest frequency that exists and has been charted and proven is love.
I feel like if you hit an NDE or just natural end of life, EOL, I feel like once you get to that stage, my rationalization, my logical mind to try to rationalize that is that your soul is no longer burdened by energies impacting it. So if you're piercing the veil and you're crossing over and you're leaving your body for even a fraction of time, in that moment, it would appear to me that it would be one of collective consciousness at that moment. So there are no other burdens from the earth affecting you because you're no longer in this realm anymore. Saturn is not pushing its pressure on you.
Well, it's
Uranus,
also
conjunctions,
the physical
other people.
body isn't weighing you down, or the belief systems per se, although your soul...
Well, your mind's no longer attached.
Yes, but there is a brain in the heart, and that is directly correlated to your soulful connection. So the things that resonate as truth, I feel like we would carry with us.
Well, you're talking about it energetically.
Yes.
Carry, right. I'm talking about the actual logical brain is no longer there processing neurons.
Yeah.
Right. So all of that burden of thought and logic.
I mean, they're still firing.
So you're only feeling energy.
But what's interesting,
on a collective consciousness level.
If that's the case, then how do people remember it?
You would have to imagine that. So the way that I see energy in general, so I talk a lot about orbs of influence, is that energy has they have orbs of influence. So basically it pulsates and it has a certain amount of emanation distance, right? So when you're talking about when I'm doing astrology, you're talking about certain planets, larger planets reach further. They have more degrees where they actually will impact, something else that's transiting along. When you're talking about this, I believe it to be the same thing. How long was it? How slow or how fast did it happen? And if it got far enough away, I would imagine it would work the same way, is that if the soul got far enough away from the body, that it would disconnect. The reason you remember it is because it didn't disconnect. It left, and then it was enough to remember it because it's sucked back in and everything, all the energy comes back in. Because memories are just vibrating frequencies. Thoughts are vibrating frequencies.
But
so why not this?
If that's true, once again, how does everybody have such a similar experience? And
because it's the same thing.
But it's not. It's different for each person.
No, they all talk about the same thing. A light and compassion and this
no, I mean, they each come back with different lessons. They each come back with things that are specific to their lives.
Once you've reached that level of freedom, essentially, and you bring it back, your lesson is going to be different because the energies in your chart, the energies of you are not the same as the next person. So you take that lesson and apply it to your real life existence, and it becomes
if your chart has to do with your birth, and that's essentially your body. So that is the chart of your body, the ascendant is, not of your soul.
No, the ascendant is your body. Mars is your body.
What I'm saying
everything
is
in there is
your
you
chart
and your soul.
Is created the moment of your birth, not of your conception, which would be the spark of life, which would be the spirit.
See, there's the...
This is just, okay. So therefore, when you leave the body, you also leave the limitations of that cosmic imprint.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, what I'm saying is astrology becomes irrelevant in the astral realm.
I literally just said that.
Okay. Well, I didn't.
When you leave, we all experience the same thing.
Yeah.
Which means nothing astrologically has anything to do with it because we're experiencing the same thing from collective consciousness. When it comes back into the body, it becomes a different lesson because now you're reintegrating with your astrological self. So that collective consciousness, that's like, This is a very bad metaphor, but it's like we all go to the same baseball game. I know sports.
Oh, okay.
just
Do I have a hot dog?
You can have a hot dog, and there could be sauerkraut on it.
Okay.
Okay, look.
And I need ketchup.
Okay, we all have the
Where's
same.
the ketchup?
It's in packets so that you can put the amount on that you want.
Okay, all right? It's not really great for the environment, but all right.
And we all have the same hot dog and sauerkraut. We are all experiencing the same thing.
I don't want everyone to have the same hot dog.
Well, we do. Collective consciousness here. Okay. Right? This is the metaphor.
Yeah.
We all have the same hot dog with sauerkraut and packets of ketchup. We're all watching the same game. And let's suspend belief for a minute that we all have the same vantage point as well.
But that's not what collective consciousness is.
I'm using a metaphor.
Okay.
I'm using the metaphor for leaving the body. We're all experiencing the same baseball game when we leave the body. We all see the same thing.
That would be hell. Yeah.
We're all watching the same Broadway play.
Oh, which one?
The Driving Miss Daisy.
That's not. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if next year that's a freaking musical.
Annie. That's one, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Which one do you want to see?
No, I'm just messing with you. Okay,
we're all
finish
seeing
your
this,
metaphor.
whatever the hell. I'm going back to baseball. We're all watching the same game, show. It doesn't matter. We all see exactly the same thing, but when we come back, we all come back to our body, which is in a different place. So we all have a different vantage point. We all have different lives.
I get your point. I understand.
You are insufferable.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, I mean,
you're asking why people have different experiences from it. It's because the correlation between your real life and what you experienced
I get that you're
different.
giving me your opinion of why you think they have different experiences.
Isn't that what this is? This is a podcast.
Yeah,
right?
I love it.
In a podcast?
I love it.
Okay.
I don't fully agree.
No, we're not going to. I said that like 30 minutes ago that you and I have very different beliefs when it comes to this.
It's true.
And other people have different beliefs than we do, which is perfectly fine, which brings me back to the whole point that I was making before, is that you can't prove it.
But my whole point is the minute you get into spirituality, proof is irrelevant.
No, it's not.
Well, I believe it is. I think
you do tarot. It's
think,
provable. You hold this rock, you use your flower essences, I do your astrology chart, all provable. But once you get to a certain aspect of it, is no longer provable. Even getting to a transcendental state or meditation or herbs.
There are systems within the body that haven't even been studied. There are places on this planet that haven't even been studied.
Right, but they are provable once they are.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is impossible to prove. Afterlife and who and what God is, what happens at the beginning of time, what happens afterwards.
Yes, but what I'm saying, you're saying that that's necessary. No, I'm saying it's not necessary.
No, I'm saying as somebody who has a very logical mind, I can't blindly believe something, which is the whole reason I was not cool with church, which is the whole thing we were starting about. So when we start talking about afterlife and we start talking about like reincarnation or leaving the body or any of this that we're talking about, past lives, I have a very hard time getting on board with that because you can't prove it to me. Like other aspects of spirituality, you can prove to me on any level.
Well, I have no interest in proving it to you.
I know.
Because it's only something that can be experienced. And
you
once
can't experience a past life and know for certain that it was a past life.
You can't know anything for certain.
I can know that I'm holding this card here, and I can know that, when I do tarot readings, if it resonates or not. And other people can see that reaction.
Yeah, but that's
to know
your
if it's
reality.
resonating.
That's your truth. You're simply proving your own belief.
Yes and no. Like you could have somebody who's sitting next to me who's been there the entire time. And when you start doing the reading for me, the person next to me is like, holy crap, how did you know that? We've done that. We've been to psychic tarot readers who have done that. That's
I
proof.
do that. Yeah.
And you do that all the time, right?
Yeah.
That's proof. That is proof. When I do the astrology charts and I talk to you about your childhood, that's proof. Energy, whatever. Past lives, impossible to prove. Afterlife, impossible to prove.
But
so all I'm saying is it's
I think we fixate too much on what happens after and not enough on this life that we're leading right now.
I agree with that.
And I think that
before and after is irrelevant.
I think that death is something that we learn and know very well in this life, but just in different forms.
Of course, there's always starts and endings. There's always upheavals and renewals and rebirth.
A woman experiences a death every month if she's menstruating. You know, whatever.
I know, she becomes...
Prove it. No.
Yeah, right?
No, I mean, each month that woman doesn't have a baby, the possibility of who that baby was and who that woman would be as its mother dies.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a sad death, but it's literally shedding the possibility of that rebirth, because every time you become a mother, you're reborn. You know?
I mean, that's what a lot of women actually don't understand that about their cycle, which is something I found interesting. How many
You've learned
women
so much about cycles.
I know so much. When we met, right?
You know a bit, but I mean, you know the more spiritual aspect now, the connection to the moon and all that stuff.
I actually knew about the lunar connection coming in. I always found it odd when some women weren't, and then now through really what you've kind of gotten into is where I realized more so the connection that women have with big pharma and like just poor food choices or even good food choices from poor sources.
I think it's also just stress and your own connection to your moon, to your period, you know.
But all of these
thinking
external...
that it's dirty when it's actually such a gift.
All these external forces, they all weigh in on this. And but a lot of women don't connect to it.
So here's a good question. If you could imagine the afterlife in the best way.
In my current state, I don't believe in an afterlife.
Okay.
I believe...
So you went from I don't know to I don't believe. Interesting.
Well, I don't know, but I also don't believe.
Okay.
That's a logical versus a philosophical approach. My rational mind, I know that I don't know.
Okay.
My philosophical mind says I don't believe in like a paradise or an afterlife of any sort other than maybe a holding cell. Not as morbid or drab as that, but something like I don't believe that
like
you jump...
Like the executive lounge at the airport, you know?
Maybe not the airport, but yeah, something along those lines. Like a nice little penthouse suite.
Somewhere you can get like a sandwich or something, you know?
Right. A Snickers. And you're in the afterlife, so you won't get diabetes from it.
Right.
No, I think... I don't believe that everybody's instantly reincarnated.
But is the flight late and that's why you're waiting?
Well, that's the thing is I think
it's on the tarmac.
Right. Oh, God. That's hell. I think that we await certain energy for certain life lessons that we need. Because the whole idea, and I'm on board with this because I haven't really disproved it in my mind, but I haven't tried either. But I'm on board with the idea that we're looking for perfection because Neptune is also idealistic qualities. So just explaining it through astrology, I can get on board with this.
What if perfection is true connection with spirit?
We're looking to be pure. That's what I think. I think we're looking to learn all the lessons so that we can be the highest possible vibration, which is like that clear crystal quartz. Or the purest
connection to spirit, like the embodiment of...
Well, I believe we're all one. So that's it's not an individual. It's more of like a bunch of... I also have entertained this idea, which I was going to turn into a screenplay at some point, but I just wasn't sure how I'd even do it because
it's similar to Hindi. It's interesting.
It has nothing to... You can't... I don't even know how to explain it because if you believe that time is not linear, that... And honestly, I can rectify this. I can resolve this in my mind, but you and I are the same person.
Okay.
In this theory that I have.
Okay.
Isla is me. You are me. I am you. Because we are all part of one collective consciousness that you are actually living... You are actually me living that life, and I am actually you living this life conversely, because we're the same. At different times, interacting with each other at the same time on different timelines.
Interesting.
That's been something I've been like thinking a lot about, actually, is that every action you make is something I kind of know you're going to make because there is that connection.
Is it that... So you're essentially believing that you create your reality, like that I'm not actually real. I believe we're living out.
I believe we're living out a simulation, not like the Matrix,
Okay.
But I believe we're living out a simulation that we've created for ourselves to experience a human experience at the same exact time on different timelines. Okay. So like you and I are not actually here at the same time, but because of the warping of time, it seems like we are.
Interesting. And what does that accomplish?
Most of what I think about accomplishes absolutely nothing. They're just thoughts.
No, it's great. I mean, thoughts. you can, but you can't prove it.
I can't. I can't prove it.
And I respect that.
And I don't go around telling people that that's the way it is either.
No, I know. I actually prefer things that you can't prove, but that you have to feel to believe.
Because of your energy in this lifetime.
Sure.
Literally because of your energy in this lifetime. Your 12th house rulers in the 7th house in Pisces, your Mercury's in Pisces, all of it blends together. It literally has to do, this is why you're so inherently psychic as well. I also am inherently psychic, but for a different reason.
And in a different way.
And in a very different way.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very interesting.
Well, whatever you want to call it, my energies were necessary to be able to hold space for people so that they can be super vulnerable and share their...
We were just talking about how that came out for you. We were talking about your chart earlier, and I was trying to explain to you.
You're always talking about my chart.
Always. Quincunx energy in your chart and how you actually have a yod with your Chiron. Mm-hmm. And, take my classes if you want to know what all that means. But essentially, it's this very difficult to understand energy with how your Pluto, your Chiron, and your Neptune all fuse together to create your life goal, your life destiny that you've always meant to be a healer.
Yeah.
And you've always used singing as the Neptune vibration, but now you're using spirituality.
Yeah. Well, singing was a way to connect to that spirituality. There's always something very spiritual because I was also an actress. So I was singing and telling stories. And it wasn't until I lost my sister that my music really became very emotional. I was always an actress, but now I have access to higher, deeper emotions. And
I was just going to piggyback off of what you just said about storytelling.
Oh, okay.
That's a very Neptune thing as well, which has to do with the church.
Okay.
And just the Bible and God. I'm just circling it back to the beginning of the conversation.
Well, I mean, you're also forgetting some very important Scorpion energy that I have in my chart, which I want to dig into the truth. I want to find, the recesses of the facts and the origins of things, and I think that has to do with the Sagittarian energy that I also have there. Where is that? Is that I think it's North Node. What was my North Node? There's some sort of higher learning. I can't remember my chart. This is Logan's thing. I don't.
Your North Node's in your 9th house, which has to do with that.
There you go.
But it's not. I mean, that's naturally Sagittarian ruled.
Yes. So naturally.
Right. But I'm just trying to bring it back to God in the afterlife.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's what. So it was just interesting that you brought up your Pisces energy and your singing.
No, you brought up my Pisces energy. I didn't say anything about my Pisces energy.
Everything you were just talking about a second ago.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we get the point, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that's what we have for God and the afterlife.
So, but you didn't, what would you want the afterlife to be? If you could.
I don't want an afterlife.
Oh, okay.
In no version of leaving this earth, leaving this planet, leaving this experience, would I want to go somewhere and be there forever. That does not appeal to me.
Or would you want to do this again?
Yeah.
You would want to live a human existence again.
I have so much guilt in my life that I would love a redo. I don't want to live the same life. Okay. A lot of people go back and want to change their own life. And I've thought about that, like I'm human, but I don't want to live this life again. And I don't want to live a perfect life either. I just don't want to relive these experiences. I want to relive other ones because I see so many other people's lives and how they live them out. And it would just be interesting to, have those type of experience, have those types of energies that they deal with, positive and negative, and to understand that. I don't want to redo this one. I definitely don't want to go someplace like sit in a lounge forever or even watch a sunset or even like the most utopian place that sounds like hell to me. Boring. Seems very boring.
When it comes to an afterlife, I love the idea of being reunited with the people that I loved and lost, and with God. And, but again, I don't like to focus too much on it because I feel like it's futile.
Well, yeah, that's kind of my point. I don't think about it.
And not only that, I just feel like I want to be surprised if I'm wrong, in a good way. I truly, truly do not think that there is a hell.
I don't think there's any version of an afterlife that I would be happy with.
I'm sure that's not true.
No, there would be something that I might be happy with, for a very short time. Mm-hmm. But I would hate. I've thought about that a lot in my life. When people used to talk about heaven, heaven used to bother me too, and it's for that same reason. Like that doesn't make me feel good. You need the pain, you need the trials, you need the hardship, you need the things that don't go right. You need Does that line from Vanilla Sky? The sweet just isn't as sweet without the sour.
It's true.
Like you wouldn't care. We talk about how people don't value things that are free. It's the same thing. There's no antithesis to it.
But it's a very different experience outside of the body.
It's what you think, but we haven't been there.
I mean, you wouldn't have any physical limitations. You could fly.
Yeah, but I mean, at some point that gets old.
Of course, for you.
I've gotten to a point where I've had a lot of luxury vehicles in my life. They just are normal now. They're just normal vehicles now. And when I see a vehicle that's not a luxury vehicle, I'm just like, I don't want to drive that. Right? Yeah. And I know it's snobbish or whatever, but my point towards this still stands that once you get something, you don't value it as much once you have it and you kind of take it for granted. And I feel like that's
if you don't take something for granted and you remind yourself of how precious
it is. Yeah, but you're talking about heaven, which is technically eternity. Like at what point do you have to keep reminding yourself that this is great?
But there's a great movie, What Dreams May Come, with Robin Williams, and his children die in a terrible car accident.
Yeah.
And then his wife kills herself. Mm-hmm. And then he dies, or no, she kills herself after he dies accidentally. And he's reunited with his kids in heaven. It's so beautiful. Only they don't look like them. They take on different form, but it's still their spirit. And then he finds out that his wife killed herself, and he's like, well, where is she? And she's in her own version of hell, her own construction of her pain. So he has to traverse hell in order to get to her. And he tries to get her out of her own hell, but she's cycled in her own pain and she is imprisoned by it. And it's not until that he tries to join her in her pain that she comes out of it and frees both of them. Now that's fucking beautiful to me. And what I loved about that movie is it combines so many concepts of heaven where they can choose to reincarnate and find each other again. Or they can choose to stay in heaven, and actually they like their children have jobs, so they welcome new souls.
See, that's hell
and they help with integration. That's hell.
A hell to me. Because
no, it's a choice.
I don't believe that we're soulmates in other lives. I don't believe that I'm our children's father in other lives. I think that we have different roles to different people at different times based on different energies.
But does that come from a need of separation? Like to feel like...
No, I just don't feel that people are bound like that lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. I think some souls, we have met more than others, and we've had some sort of connection on one romantic or non. But I definitely don't like the idea, because it removes any sense of randomness. It removes any sense of actual experience, because if you're experiencing the same things all the time with the same people, I talk about that all the time, how people won't leave their 10-mile radius, and that's all they experience.
Yeah, but
there's no
it's
growth.
A completely different experience in each life. It may be the same soul.
Okay, so you live with the same people, and you go to this store, and then you go to the amusement park, and then you go take a trip, and then you go, on vacation, and then you go to work. Like, it's the same thing. It doesn't. There's no expansion. You only know this. I don't like that. It's so limiting to me. I like the idea that billions of souls, if not more, because in my theory, they're not all here at the same time.
Well, I think that's because of Mercury and Gemini, where you just want something new, something different, and, everything.
Could be.
Yeah, it's all about variety, but...
I also resonate highly with expansion, and I just find the same things over and over to be monotonous and very limiting. And you see it all the time. You see it culturally. People who live in a small town and they never leave that small town, they have very specific beliefs, and they're very limited and can be very...
I think it also depends on whether or not they're tuned in or plugged into the matrix, if they don't watch TV. But if you go to tribal areas and people who've never left their land, but have these cosmic connections with God, have actual magic.
I'm talking about actual human experience, though.
They're human.
With each other on a mental level.
They're human and have experiences with each other, these ancient tribes that have always lived off the land. I'm just saying they've lived in the same radius.
I'm talking about experience.
Yeah.
They're not worldly. They're not cultured. They know nothing about French culture. They know nothing about Chinese culture. They know what they know, and that's it. And that's what happens. People don't expand. They don't travel. They don't do any of that.
But I mean, as you know, with astrology, traveling isn't for everyone. A lot of people, I would argue that they are cultured, because a lot of people come to them to learn. They become teachers. And as such, they get people from all walks of life coming in and then teaching them. So they become cultured as a result.
It's not really the same. It's not experience.
But if they were to leave,
they're not immersing themselves.
But if they were to leave, they wouldn't be able to be the teachers for these people.
I understand that there's limitations within their system. That's why I hate systems.
It's not a limitation. It's a choice.
It's still a limitation.
To you.
If they can't leave.
To them, it's their purpose.
You said can't.
No, I didn't say can't.
You said they can't leave. Okay, well, if they don't leave, then they can't be cultured. It's just the way that it works. There are a lot of people with heavy Cancer energy that don't leave.
I learned all of my Native American culture from stories, and not.
Does that make you cultured, or does that make you knowledgeable?
Both.
Culture is experience.
Yeah, and I've experienced these things by putting them into practice. I think culture is a matter of geography just as much as God is, and belief.
I don't think it's geography. I think that in the real world, it becomes a geographical thing. And yeah, people can come to you, but you're not experiencing a people. You're experiencing a person. And that's very different. You're not going into someone's hut, into their village, into their community, into whatever. You're having one person who might not even represent that culture very well come to you.
Well, at the end of the day, you strip away all the traditions and everything, and we're all the same. We all just, are flesh and bone. And
you're stripping away everything that makes us human, though.
That's not what makes us human.
Sure it is.
Stuff doesn't make us human.
No, I didn't say possessions.
Okay.
But you said strip away culture, strip away tribalism, strip away family, strip away.
I'm not saying that. No. I'm talking about being able to fly, having cars, all the stuff that facilitates travel. Like back in the day, they had horses. Yeah, you can walk. I mean, you can't walk across the sea, but you could build a boat, But my point is, when you take these plant medicines or when you meditate, you are traveling. You're becoming...
that's a completely different thing. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Well, you're becoming cultured.
No, you're going into a spiritual realm, so to speak.
Yeah, which is a culture.
It's not culture at all.
It's not culture?
How is that culture? It has nothing to do with the way people do things. That has to do with your connection to God.
No, but it's connected. Like there are ancient temples on a line across the equator. Okay.
Okay.
That they are thousands of miles apart from each other.
Okay.
But they have exact formations to the T. If you tried to split the rock with a hair, you couldn't. Each one is a replica of the other.
Okay.
Okay. Now, they clearly had not only the same strength of lifting these huge boulders and building these amazing sites, but they also have similarities carved into the stone. These people weren't in communication with each other, supposedly, because we look at communication.
I mean, this is really taking us into the whole aliens.
No, I mean, I wasn't going there. Mind. Okay. But see, we have to go to otherworldly things when we limit ourselves and the possibility that through spirituality, through connection to the cosmos, we could be communicating with people thousands of miles away, or that's what they could have been doing.
I mean, that's communication and that's ethereal, but it has nothing to do with culture, which was my point.
What is culture to you?
Cultures is the traditions and the way a people act and
and in Native American culture,
live their lives.
Their rituals are a huge part of their life. It is everything.
Right, but if I never meet a Native American person, I will never experience their culture. Me going on an ayahuasca trip does not connect me with a Native American.
But you can have spiritual experiences by...
I'm not talking about spiritual at all.
You can gain an understanding of the culture by reading about it.
You have to assume that what you're reading is even accurate. And you're talking about textbook interpretation of somebody's culture.
No, I'm not talking about a textbook. I'm not talking about a textbook. I'm talking about somebody's true story.
Okay, even reading a story is still not experiencing anything. It's reading it.
All right.
Maybe reading someone's experience if it's even documented accurately.
Well, when I read, it feels like an experience.
Well, that's because you're translating that.
Yeah.
But that you're not actually experiencing it.
Okay.
It's just reading.
I mean, you don't read like I do, so...
I read more than you do. I just don't read what you read.
You don't read books.
No.
Yeah.
No. I read everything online.
Yeah.
And I speed read. And I don't really... It also comes down to interests. I have zero interest in history or what people have done. I have a lot of interest in fact and philosophy, but I don't care about their personal life. But that's a whole other topic. So that's our experiences on God.
Wait, one more thing, and then we're going to end on a positive note. So if there was a show back in the day, it was like the actor studio. Did you ever see that? James
I know
Lipton.
of it, but I never watched it.
Okay, well, he always asked his actors similar questions. So I'm just going to ask you one question. If God was real, and this is the question. This is how he said it. And if heaven is real and you meet God at the pearly gates, what would you say?
So I'm suspending my beliefs.
This is, yes.
And I'm saying that Christianity
this is just for fun.
Is true.
No, or just God and whatever you want to consider it.
Well, I don't believe in pearly gates. So
I know.
I'm going into this fantasy. Okay.
What would you say to God?
What would I say to God?
Yeah.
Let me in. Actually, it's not even what I'd say. I'd say, can I go back?
Okay.
Can I go back? I have no interest in going into heaven. Okay. I don't like that concept at all. So if I end up at pearly gates, I'm going to be like, damn it, dude.
Okay.
And then I'll be more pissed off that God is showing himself and standing there at pearly gates to let me in. And he did not show himself one bit my entire life.
Oh, but God has showed the energy.
No,
yeah.
The universe.
Yeah.
See, if I say God, I don't mean...
You mean the guy in the white coat or the white...
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean that
like the Santa Claus God.
Yeah. You've been here this entire damn time. Can't you get somebody else to guard this gate? Couldn't you have showed up when I needed you? Mr. Omnipotent. Omnipotent.
Nice.
And I've always strongly disliked that too. The omnipotence. It removes all accountability from both God and you. So basically you're omnipotent. You're all hearing, all seeing. You've heard all of my prayers and you've answered none of them up until I stopped believing in you.
I could argue that God's answered some of your prayers.
Is this a reference to you?
I was referring to our daughter, but
I didn't pray for her. We manifested her together.
Which
we created
could
her.
be considered a prayer.
Not in religious context.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't like, please give me. No, we talked about her way too much before it happened, and then divine timing happened.
Yeah.
So she's beautiful. She's God. She's a product of a universal proof of universal deity. I'll say it that way.
Okay.
There's definitely a higher power.
Okay.
Its form is what I question.
That's fair.
But my path to spirituality is like less than a decade old. So
yeah, you're a baby. You're still you're new to this. It's awesome.
And I need proof.
Yeah.
You got to show me. And it can be, I can suspend belief a little bit if you can show me anything.
Okay.
So like I said, when you introduced me to tarot, that was proof.
Yeah. Well, you need something tangible.
Doesn't even have to be tangible. Like vibrations are not technically tangible, but I can feel those.
I mean,
psychic stuff. Mm-hmm. When we connect psychically and we talk psychically sometimes, that's proof to me.
Okay.
Because we've then verify it. Like, how did you know that? We do it all the time.
Yeah.
Actually, at the beginning of this podcast, we both sang the same song for a second.
Yeah, it's
because
true.
I heard it in my head for like a split second. I heard that song and I just kept going with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe
beautiful.
in that. And that's hard to prove. But to me, there is proof. It just, yeah.
This was a heavy one.
This was a heavy one. This is a tough one. Because
it's a good one, though.
We've all had our experiences. And anybody who's watching or listening to this podcast, we've all had some sort of denial is the word that's coming in my head, but that's not the right word. We've had our issues with it and we've had our doubts.
I never have.
You've never had doubt in God.
No.
You don't believe in God.
What?
You were taught God in religious context.
I've always believed in God, but I didn't believe in the structure of God that I was taught through Christianity and Catholic school.
So is God a guy on a throne to you?
No.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But you were taught that young.
But I never felt like when things went down in my house, when horrible things happened, I never was like, why God? It was more like, okay, why? I want to know why. Not in an angry way. When my sister...
Oh, I've had the anger.
Well, my dad did too. And I completely understand that. It's just, it's never been my response. And I think everybody has a different response.
Yeah, so then I've had much more of a staggered journey than you have.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But neither one is, I mean, it's still been like this for me because finding my true connected concept of God, it's taken form and then out of form and then form and then out of form for a long time. So, and I think everybody has a very personal relationship with God and no one's right and no one's wrong.
Boom.
Boom.
And that's the Mystic Rebels podcast.
Mystic Rebels! Ah! Our dreams come true.
No. We'll catch you on the next one.
Catch you on the flippity flop.
No.